We are getting down to crunch time for the election in terms of anything that people need to have when they go and vote. What are some key things that people, they may not remember what they need to take to their polls?
Okay, we're 15 days away from the election. Voter registration cuts off this Friday, October 26th. So if they haven't registered, they still have time, and if they choose to mail their voter registration application in, it has to be postmarked by October 26th. When they go to the polls, Alabama is a voter ID state. It does not have to be photo ID only. There are various forms of ID. You can use a photo ID, such as your driver's license, a college ID, your employer-issued ID, but you can also use non-photo ID, such as a bank statement or a utility bill, Medicaid or Medicare card. So there are various forms of identification a voter can utilize, and it's the same forms of identification that we've been using the last several election cycles.
And another big deadline also is, I believe it's the 1st, is for the absentee. Is that correct? Any information with that?
Absentee voting will continue all the way through November 1st. You can do that two ways. You can mail in an absentee ballot request, or you can come down to the local courthouse in any of the various counties, and you can vote on-site absentee through November 1st.
And then you were mentioning a big turnout. Tell me that number that you anticipate for voter turnout, and then what's the message, because it's going to be a lot of people.
It's a presidential election. Presidential election are our highest turnout elections. We're anticipating between 75 and 80% turnout. When we have that high turnout, some of our polling places are not really constructed to handle that high of a turnout, so we just ask people to be patient. There could be lines, but we're going to have plenty of poll officials working that day to try and help them vote as quickly as possible. But with a heavy turnout, we just ask the voters to be patient and be able to cast their vote.
And 75 to 80%, though, that's of registered voters. That's not of white or of eligible voters, right?
The 75 to 80% turnout is of registered voters. So we'll send approximately 435,000 names to the polls, so we'll expect well over 300,000 people to vote in this election, in this coming election on November 6th.
And you also mentioned you're going to have a lot more people in terms of workers at the polls. Is the county ready to handle this massive crowd?
We're approaching the same way we did in 2008 when we had a record turnout. Over 300,000 people showed up to vote that day. So we do staff the polls with extra poll workers. We had a big primary in March. We're increasing our poll workers even up from that number. So we're trying to do all we can with the resources that we have to make sure that it's a smooth election day.
You talk a little bit about the machines. Obviously, with the reduction in workforce in Jefferson County, trying to get those machines ready, delivered, and tested is usually one of the most difficult tasks that you guys have. Can you talk with me a little bit about that and how you guys are handling that?
We're going to handle the machine testing and delivery the same way that we did for the primary and the runoff in March and April. We are utilizing employees from other departments to come and do the testing and accuracy and programming, helping with the programming and testing of all the machines. And then for delivery, we're utilizing our roads and transportation employees who are certified to drive trucks, and they know the county, so they'll deliver and set up the polling facilities, and they'll also be utilized to pick up the machines and supplies after the election.
And will there be a supervisor with people that are not within your department to make sure that those outside of the department are following procedures?
Yeah, we'll have folks from our elections division and general services that are overseeing all the delivery of our equipment and the pickup of the equipment, so it's returned to our facilities.
Do you have any more questions?
And then I think if someone has a myriad of questions, is there a website that they can go to get some of those just basic questions answered?
The best website as far as voter information, the Secretary of State has a voting website. It's alabamavotes.gov, alabamavotes.gov, and you can register. You can print off a voter registration application there. You can print an absentee ballot request. From there, you can check on your voting status. There's ballot styles. It's a very informative website. So if they just want to do things through the internet, that's the best website to utilize.
And that will have the polling stations in there in the county as well?
Yes, it'll have the individual's polling site in there also.
Barry, let me ask you a little bit. it came to our attention this morning that there's some misinformation, possibly like a little grassroots effort trying to get people to change how they're actually marking their ballots. Now, each of the ballots has specific instructions on how to mark that ballot. So people being told to circle their candidates and X out the ones they don't want, would that make that ballot invalid?
Yeah, it would make it invalid. If someone fills out a ballot where the machine can't read it, it's going to spit it out. So you'll have a spoiled ballot. If straightforward, you're going to be giving. It tells you straightforward to mark the box beside the candidate. No circling, no checking. You fill in completely the box beside your candidate, and that's how you mark your ballot.
Unfortunately, in this day and age, we still have a lot of people out there that are illiterate that may need help marking their ballots. How do they go about getting that assistance?
If someone needs assistance, they're allowed that by law. They just need to let one of the poll workers know that they're going to need assistance, and then the poll worker will make sure that that person gets to vote with the proper assistance.
Most importantly, what invalidates a ballot?
One of the main things that invalidates a ballot is where you vote a straight ticket for a particular party, then you go down and you try and vote for someone else individually that's a member of that same party. So that's what we call a double vote, and the machine will not accept that.
So the most important thing is read the instructions, understand the instructions, and if you're not sure, ask someone.
Yes, ask someone. We're going to have poll workers. We're going to have plenty of poll workers there. They're going to know, they'll be able to assist you in answering questions about how to properly mark your ballot.
Does it bother you with the work that you're doing that people still try on social media or by word of mouth try to change the way somebody casts a ballot? Do you think that that's unfair to the person that's voting?
Well, we can only control what we can control. Obviously, we want people, all eligible voters, to exercise their right to vote and to do it accordingly to the law. So it's very unfortunate when someone gets out there and tries to spread rumors or misinformation. So we encourage the voters to listen to the news media, listen to the paper, and so they can follow the proper instructions. Again, if they show up at the polls on election day, if they have any questions, they should be able to get their questions answered by the poll workers.
What can I do if I accidentally mismark my ballot?
If you mismark your ballot, you approach one of the poll workers, let them know that you've mismarked your ballot. That will be termed a spoiled ballot and will be placed in a spoiled ballot receptacle. So it will not be fed into the machine and cannot be counted. And then you'll receive another ballot.
How does it work when the machine can't count a ballot and it has to be counted afterwards by hand?
It's counted by hand.
What's the process on that, I guess?
Well, if there's from the polls, all the ballots should be able to be placed into the machine, because unless they're ripping or tearing the ballot, and at that point you would actually be spoiling your own ballot. So all ballots should be able to be fed in the machine at the polls on election day. Usually where we have to hand count ballots is the provisional count.
And a provisional ballot is what?
A provisional ballot is a ballot that's cast on election day but is not placed in the actual voting machine. It's placed in a provisional ballot. A vote is cast provisionally because usually there's a problem with it. Someone didn't show up at the polling place with an ID and it's too late to go home to get one. They show up and their name is not on the voting roll, but they insist that they have a right to vote. We allow them to cast that. Then we have 1 week to sort it out and research that voter's vote to see if it counts or not.
But for the most part, 99% of the people that are going to go in there, they should have no problems casting a ballot, just marking it, following directions, and placing it in that machine. Yeah,
it's pretty straightforward. We'll have the voter rolls at all the various precincts throughout the county. You tell the poll official your name, show the ID, you'll get a ballot, mark it properly, place it in the tabulation machine, get your I voted sticker, and you're done.
Now, if somebody is being approached by another campaign person or somebody that's trying to, I guess, sway them on the way that they should be voting, is that something that needs to be reported?
Yes. Campaign workers must be at least 30 feet from the entrance of every polling site. So a voter inside 30 feet to an entrance should not be communicated with, harassed, or anything like that as they enter their polling facility. If there is a problem, report it to one of the poll workers. We'll have security either through the sheriff's deputies, who are the main security, or the local police force.
And what's the last date that I can obtain an absentee ballot?
You can vote absentee all the way through November 1st.
And I just need to contact you in order to get that ballot?
No, absentee is a separate department. Their phone number in Jefferson County is 205-325-5313.